All right, taking to New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo, he announced yesterday he's closing all schools through the end of the school year. He has the latest numbers, including testing numbers that early on look pretty good, to Governor Cuomo.
Uncharted waters, that doesn't mean you just proceed blindly, right? You get whatever information that you can because you want to stay informed. Even in the old days when sailors would sail into uncharted waters. This is before GPS and radar and depth finders. They would throw out a piece of lead with a rope. The lead would fall to the bottom, and they would call back to the captain how deep the water was. The lead even had on the very bottom a piece of wax that would pick up what was on the ocean bottom, whatever sand, rocks, etc. So the captain could tell basically where he was. So uncharted waters doesn't mean proceed blindly, right? It means get information, get data the best you can, and use that data to decide where you're going. So especially in this situation, we have so much emotion, you have politics, you have personal anxiety that people feel, social anxiety, social stress. Let's stick to the facts, let's stick to the data, let's make sure we're making decisions with the best information that we have. So we do a lot of testing, a lot of tracking to find out where we are. We test number of hospitalizations. Every night we find out how many people are in the hospital the day before, and we've been tracking that. Good news is that number is down a tick again today. The net change in hospitalizations is down a tick. Intubations is down, which is very good news. The new cases walking in the door, the new COVID cases, the number of new infections was also down a little bit, 831. It had been relatively flat at about 900 every day, which is not great news. Yesterday was 831. We'll watch to see what happens with that. The number that I watch every day, which is the worst, is the number of deaths. That number has remained obnoxiously and terrifyingly high, and it's still not dropping at the rate we would like to see it drop. It even went up a little bit, 299, 289 the day before. So that is bad news. 276 deaths in hospitals, 23 in nursing homes. As everybody knows, nursing homes are where the most vulnerable population is and the highest number of the most vulnerable population. But again, use the data, use information to determine actions, not emotions, not politics, not what people think or feel, but what we know in terms of facts. We've been sampling all across the state to determine the infection rate so we know if it's getting better, if it's getting worse. And we've done the largest survey in the nation, testing for people who have antibodies. If somebody has antibodies, it means that that person was infected, right? That's what the antibody test does for you. It tells you that that person was infected. They've now recovered so that they have antibodies. I went through this with my brother Chris. He got infected. He now has the antibodies. So if you test him, he tests positive for antibodies. So we've been doing these antibody testings all across the state. We have the largest sample now, over 15,000 people, which is an incredibly large sample. And when we started on the 22nd, we had 2,900 people surveyed at that time. We had about a 13.9%, just about 14% infection rate statewide. It then went up to about 14.9, and today it is down to 12.3. Now, statisticians will say this is all plus or minus in the margin of error, but it's a large sample. It is indicative. 14 to 14.9, down to 12.3. And as you can see, we test about every 4 or 5 days. We have so much at stake, so many decisions that we have to make, that we want to get those data points as quickly as we can. And seeing it go down to 12%, it may only be a couple of points, but it's better than seeing it go up, that's for sure. And again, this is outside the margin of error, so this is a good sign. And it is 15,000 people surveyed, so it's a large number. You can then start to look at where in the state, who in this state, so that will inform our strategy. You can see it's a little bit more male than female. Not exactly sure why that is. In New York City, you see the number went from 21 to 24, and it's down to 19.9.
Well, we're going to continue monitoring this. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York sharing the latest numbers out of the state here. Deaths still stubbornly high. Cases is still high, but trending down. That is the increase in cases coming down. What is a forward-looking indicator, those are more lagging indicators, is what's happening on the hospitalization front. Fewer people coming in with the COVID virus to be hospitalized, in other words, to be looked at and examined. That is a promising development. Now, whether that is enough with the 15,000 testing going on right now in the state to get the governor to move up to ease some of these provisions, these stay-at-home and sheltering provisions that have been in effect now for the better part of a month. They're meant to sort of phase out, or at least hit the deadline on May 15th, so in a little less than 2 weeks. So nothing would indicate that there's anything there to cut that short, even though the governor has said in prior remarks, not in these thus far, that he would eventually unwind these provisions, first for upstate New York, presumably where there are fewer cases of the coronavirus, and not necessarily for downstate around the New York metropolitan area, for example, which has the highest incidence of cases. More than half, for example, the cases and deaths in New York State have occurred in the New York City metropolitan area. We're going to be monitoring that, also monitoring other developments that will take effect on Monday. I'm not talking about the states that will reopen, but a number of airlines that will have a new policy in effect that you have to wear a face mask. If this will be the case not only at JetBlue, but Frontier and Delta. Others might join along, even though Southwest has said for the time being it is not. Grady Trimble has the latest on all of that from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. Grady.
Neil, you can see it's very quiet here this morning, but I will say most, but not all passengers here have opted already to wear some sort of face covering like this one or a face mask. And JetBlue, as you mentioned, became the first airline earlier this week to announce that it would be requiring all passengers getting on their flights to wear these types of masks or coverings. Every other major airline in the United States quickly followed suit. And actually, not to correct you, Neil, but Southwest did come along eventually yesterday afternoon. They'll be requiring face masks starting May 11th, along with American Airlines, JetBlue, Delta, and United starting this coming Monday. This comes after some lawmakers and the largest flight attendant union in the United States pressured the airlines to make a decision like this. Airlines have already made several other changes to make flyers and their employees feel safer. They're cleaning planes more often, in some cases in between every single flight. They've also cut back on in-flight food and drink service, and some airline CEOs say they're even considering limiting seating. All of this comes as TSA says it's actually seen an uptick in passengers. The most passengers since March 29th went through a TSA checkpoint yesterday. 170,000 of them went through a checkpoint yesterday, but that's still a far cry from 2019 numbers. 2.5 million passengers went through checkpoints on May 1st of 2019. And Neil, airlines have already said they've lost hundreds of millions and in some cases billions of dollars just in the first 3 months of this year when those partial restrictions and people just stopped flying. That was only partway through the first 3 months of the year. So this quarter could be even worse, but we're starting to get a glimpse of what potentially the new normal of flying could be, as some airline CEOs say they don't expect passenger numbers to get back up to those 2019 levels until several years from now. Neil?
Can you imagine? Grady, do the airlines, then, if you don't have a mask, they hand them out to you, right?
Yeah, that's right. Some of them have different policies, but for the most part, airlines say if you don't have a mask with you, we'll give you one. We'll give you hand sanitizer and other PPE as well if you'd like it. But I will tell you, Neil, just in the terminal here this morning, before this requirement has even been put into place, most people, like I said, already have these masks or they've made one at home.
Yeah, I think most of the country has. Grady, thank you very, very much, and thank you for updating me on Southwest as well, joining on the major airlines here and recommending this policy. Everyone wears a mask. Is it a good idea? Dr. Rashini Raj joins us right now. He's with the Langone School of Medicine, a professor there. She is, I should say, top expert on these matters. You know, Doctor, when we've chatted about this in the past, one of the things that comes up is how useful it is to have a mask, not so much for those around the person wearing the mask, but the person with the mask, right? I mean, do you think this is a good idea?
Yes. It's a good idea, Neil. And, you know, this is going to start to be a good idea. But you're right. When we talk about the masks, for the most part, you're really protecting those around you. Even if you don't feel sick, we now know that it is absolutely possible to be asymptomatic, to have no coronavirus, but still be able to infect other people. And we know that planes, you know, are a place where you can get sick. And it's not so much the air. A lot of people think, well, you're having air that you're in and other people, it's not filtered well. It is actually filtered fairly well. In most airplanes, they have what are called HEPA filters, which are very good at removing 99.9% of viruses and other infectious kind of material. But it is really just the proximity, the fact that you are so close to other people, not just when you're on the plane, but when you're boarding the plane, when you're checking in, when you're touching the machine to enter in your information, all of the touch points, you could get infected. So I think it's an excellent idea, both for the staff of the planes and the airports, but also passengers like us, that everyone wear a mask and wear it the entire time. You know, I'm a doctor. I'm sort of used to wearing masks, but I don't particularly wear comfortable. You feel warm. But in this case, I think it's definitely worth it. And as we are starting to all get stir crazy and want to travel again, this price to pay, I think, for having that option back.
All right. I apologize, Doctor. We have some audio issues with you, but I thank you very much for guiding us through that. It probably is a good idea, and whether you think it's a good idea or not, I'm talking to the rest of the country here, it's going to become policy on a lot of airlines, effective on Monday. We told about earlier on about the slow reopening of restaurants and the like. In Texas, it starts with a lot of them opening up, but limited to 25% capacity. Arnaldo Richards joins us right now, but Arnaldo Richards, Pico's restaurant in Houston. Arnaldo, very good to have you. How do you think that's going to work if you can open up, but only a quarter capacity when things start?
Well, thank you for having me. But, you know, we opened up last night and for the regular dining. And it went really, really well. People were very well behaved. I mean, we did keep the social distancing as they had required. We measured the restaurant completely. Yeah, we are at 25%. I have a very large restaurant. We seat about 360 on a regular basis. And I think last night we had a seating capacity of about 92. So we was about the 25%. But it went really well. People were very well behaved. They wore their masks as we asked them to do. Of course, on the table, we didn't require for them to wear the mask, but they did. I mean, everyone behaved really, really well.
And how do you have your staff prepared for this, Arnaldo? I mean, obviously you had to get them ready for, a quarter of the number of tables or seats that you normally would. I'm sure they're having to wear masks and all. Could you explain that part of the worker part?
Well, I mean, we've been doing it for the past 8 weeks. I mean, since this started, I mean, we were doing a curbside and we were also doing deliveries. And all my staff has been trained extensively. I mean, they're all food certified. We have them wearing masks at all times. I mean, they wear gloves when they have to. We're sanitizing the restaurant completely. I mean, every single day and constantly. We have put extra measures that the Governor Abbott has set in place. I mean, we've gone beyond everything that we have. I mean, we have put shields in our bar. We got shields that we're going to put in the dining room as soon as we can get more people in the place. So, I mean, we have gone really, really well beyond, what the government expected.
Yeah, it looks that way. You know, Arnaldo, I guess the understanding is the state's going to see how this works. and in a couple of weeks, maybe up into 50%. How do you feel about that? How likely you think that is?
Well, I mean, this is really a trial. I mean, I think we need to set an example, of what we're doing here, and for the government to consider to open up to have more diners. But again, everybody has to be responsible, not only us, but also the public.
Well, I give you credit, my friend. I understand from everyone who I know in the Houston area that yours is a very, very popular restaurant, and they were just chomping at the bit to get back. So that's a testament to you and your workers that it is a draw. And you probably had to turn people away. Arnaldo, thank you very, very much. Best of luck to you and good health to you and your staff.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. Arnaldo Richards, the owner of Arnaldo Richards Pico's restaurant in Houston, and apparently it is quite the attraction. And judging from how things kicked off last night, it stands to continue to be. All right. In the meantime here, we're still talking about aid and stimulus that was meant to go to people like Arnaldo and other small businesses that just needed a help and a pickup. And the issue here is it's so popular, the demand exceeds even the increased supply of funds. And there's been a lot of money that has gone into this. Darren Williams joins us right now, the Southern Bancorp CEO. Darren, good to have you. A lot of this was already spoken for, a lot of the money, and the demand exceeded the supply of funds. Are you finding that to be the case?
Well, Neil, first of all, thanks for having us. You're exactly right. The demand is great. The demand for this program is extremely strong. People are calling us every day. We've done a small CDFI bank. We're a community development financial institution. We serve the Arkansas Mississippi Delta, and we've done over 1,000 loans for over $104 million already, and the demand is still growing.
Wow. For a lot of these guys who are trying to get it, they seem to be overwhelmed by, bigger businesses that have SWAT teams of lawyers and accountants. They're not doing anything illegal, these bigger guys, but they have more resources at their disposal to get to the front of the line, don't they? How do you deal with that?
Well, what we found, Neil, in this last round of funding, Congress allocated $30 billion for all banks, for community development financial institutions, for minority depository institutions, and for banks below $10 billion. We're more proximate with our customers, so that very small business, they are calling us on the phone. I regularly talk to businesses, and I'm actually helping to process loans along with the team. So we've had several people who bank with larger banks who have had to get in line and not been able to reach anyone. So they're able to reach us. So we're trying hard to make sure those resources reach the small business that need it. CDFI banks like ours, we're across America, and we're really trying hard to make sure that happens.
For a lot of these guys, if they hang on to their workers or try to, that loan becomes a grant. Is that still the case?
That's still the case. That's correct. So if you maintain your workforce, both your payment level and your employee count for 8 weeks after receiving a loan proceeds, then that loan is eligible for forgiveness. But 75% of those resources have to be used to pay your employees.
Darren, if I could step back just on how you've been handling, and very well, I might add, this Paycheck Protection Program and helping out smaller guys who normally would be overlooked by institutions. How is your overall business? Your customers, are they leery? Are they worried? Are they less predisposed to taking out any sort of monies here in this environment, or borrowing even for mortgage, home equity loans in an environment like this? What did you notice?
Well, so Neil, we've got a pretty diverse loan portfolio. So people are a little bit fearful, a little worried about they don't know what's going to happen. So small businesses are concerned. We also have a pretty rich agriculture portfolio, and farmers are still planting. They're still borrowing money. They're still putting seed in the ground so they can feed America. So it just depends on what sector you're in. But we do see some people who are a little nervous. We've granted relief, payment relief to our customers who have concern. Many of them have taken advantage of that. And we're trying to do all we can to make sure that we help them through this pandemic.
The reason why I asked that question, you probably heard yesterday, I think it was Wells Fargo that said they're suspending opening up home credit lines for people just because of the uncertain environment. Have you had to do anything like that just to be cautious, or what?
No, not yet. Not yet, Neil. Again, we provided various forms of payment relief for those who had concerns. But no, we've not had to do that yet. And we stay very close to our customers, and if they need help, we'll provide help. But right now, we're still open for business, and we're ready to make loans. Now, most of our time has been spent now on these paycheck protection loans, but we're still open for business, ready to do other types of loans when our customers demand that.
What does your gut tell you about how this is all going to sort out? We just finished a quarter that was, took a big wallop. We were down almost 5%. American spending is the weakest it's ever been in the latest month. And all of that, I guess, was well expected. It telegraphed the second quarter, the one we're in right now, will likely be a lot worse. And then the president and others around him say things pick up in the third quarter, really pick up in the fourth quarter, and really go racing next year. Are you in that camp?
Well, Neil, I think it all depends on how soon we get back to business, how soon we can open the economy. We've got to be careful. We've got to follow the science and make sure we do it correctly so we don't have a dip or double dip. But we're hopeful for a V-shaped recovery, but it really depends on how long we're in the shelter-in-place mode, or how long it takes for the full economy to open up. And we just don't know that. But we continue to got to be careful. Got to make sure that we're following the science. I will say that, through this pandemic, banks, we've been open because we've been deemed essential. And we've taken all the precautions necessary to make sure that we do that. So we're pleased that we're starting to see the economy open up a little bit. We want to be careful and be cautious to make sure it's done where we don't have a double dip and be right back where we were just a few weeks ago.
All right, I wish you well, Darren. I know you probably have not had much sleep dealing with all that Paycheck Protection Program sorting and lending and all that, but I wish you well. Good health to you and your staff and your customers. Thank you again.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having us.
All right. In the meantime here, we told you about that treat that's going to be available for those in Washington later on, in Atlanta and Baltimore. They're going to get to see what a lot of New Yorkers got to see it in Philadelphia, the Blue Angels and the Thunder. It takes someone like an Andre Reed, an NFL Hall of Famer, the former Buffalo Bills player, a wide receiver, and a very good one at that. 16 years in the NFL, I might point out. Most players don't go more than a few years. We're going to get to that in a second. But Andre is part of a big, massive streaming event that kicks off on Tuesday, raising money for COVID-19 relief. And it's getting a lot of response, namely because if it's Andre on the other end of the phone, you don't want to mess with this guy and say, no, I can't participate. Andre, very good to have you. It's a real honor.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me.
What made you get involved in this? I know it's helping a lot of groups, including the Boys and Girls Clubs of America and elsewhere, but this has gone way beyond even that.
Well, this country is going through uncertain times right now. We're in crisis, and everybody's looking for something to not only do, but grab onto. A lot of people are making a difference in a lot of different ways. As a club kid, I know how important the Boys and Girls Clubs have been to me over my life and what I became as a football player, but most importantly, what I became as a person. And just like any other organization that is trying to raise awareness for themselves during these difficult times, the Boys and Girls Club is no different. For 160 years, they have provided a safe place for kids to go to all over the country. And I was one of those kids. I'm a success story because of them. And I know how important it is for kids to go to those clubs every single day to get that, that support that they need, that they might not get at home. My home life wasn't as great as some kids are. And a lot of these kids go through different times in their lives that they need the extra support. And that's what the Girls of America provide. And they've been doing that for 160 plus years, man. And it is phenomenal what they do day in and day out, week in, week out, year in, year out, to provide that safe haven for kids to better themselves. To me, it's a place to be, a place to grow, and a place to be yourself. I mean, there's no other place, no other organization, I think, on this planet that you can go to, be yourself, and come out of a shell like I did as a kid, and be whatever you want to be. And that's where the Boys and Girls Club starts. That's what they do day in and day out. And I'm glad to be a part of them, glad to be an ambassador, just like Shaquille O'Neal and Jennifer Lopez and Courtney B. Vance, all these people, all these actors and entertainers and entrepreneurs. A lot of them started in the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And to me, the first pair of doors that I knew that were going to make a difference in my life were blue, and that's the blue doors of the Boys and Girls Club.
Well, you've given a lot back, Andrew. I still can't fathom how you survived with all the body blows and everything else. 16 years. I think 15 of those are with the Bills. I think the one with the Redskins. How did you hold up through all of that? You know, I can't get through a day sometimes. What the heck?
There's a lot of people that can't get through a day. You know what? I had a certain mentality, and we all our jobs and what we do in life, there's a certain mentality you have to go in with it. And my mentality was, I got that from my parents. My mom and dad taught me how to be mentally tough, how to be physically tough. And my dad was a construction worker. He worked, got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, didn't come home till 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night sometimes. And I used to see that. And I saw my mom working in a factory and providing and doing the best that they could. And I just saw toughness from them. And what I did for a living, it seemed like they intertwined, of being that tough guy, making catches across the middle and all that kind of thing. And
right.
I really, took pride in that. We all have to take pride in something that we do that makes us feel better and makes a difference. And they taught me that at an early age. And that's what I teach kids now. Every time I go into a Boys and Girls Club, they look at me, and a lot of them don't remember me playing. But I kind of give them a sense that they do remember me playing, and how I prepare and how I go about it.
Andre, they remember you playing, young man. So I don't think that's a big. And I've seen those films and highlight reels. They were not sped up. You really were lightning fast. But let me ask you a little bit about the football season this year. They hope to get it off on time. There's concern about whether the stadiums will be filled to begin with. But everything's changing. Now all of a sudden, with the New England Patriots without Brady, I'm thinking of your old Buffalo Bills. They might have a shot in that division. You give that much thought? What do you think?
That's the first thing that happened. I mean, everybody's watching Tom Brady. Where's he going? I hope he doesn't stay in the division. He ends up going to Tampa Bay. Everybody thinks that, Tampa Bay is going to be a better team, and I think they will be a better team whether or not they go to the Super Bowl or not. You never can count Tom Brady out, but the game is different. I mean, sports is different, and sports has a way of changing the landscape in this country. You can just see, if you take sports away from, what people do normally every single day and going to their kids' games and watching it on TV, it's a little different vibe. And now that they're showing a lot of different, highlights of different sports, the game is going to be different. Sports is going to be different this year in every phase, in basketball, baseball, hockey. We don't know when they're starting. We don't know the process that they're going to go about doing it. The draft is a lot different this year than it's ever been. Everything's virtual, with this pandemic going on. So people are going to have to adjust, just like in anything. People are going to have to adjust.
All right, we'll watch it closely. Andre, if you could just do me a favor and just start aging, that would really make me feel better. Whatever. You just chalk that puppy up. I can see that. Andre Reed, NFL Hall of Famer, former Buffalo Bills wide receiver. He could run for president in Buffalo and get elected like tomorrow. All right, we have a lot more coming up, including some dazzling performances over the skies of Baltimore right now and soon Washington, D.C. Stay with us because the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds are here.